When it comes to fire alarm cabling, it's important to know the rules of separation. Most federal jurisdictions require that the cables and raceways be installed side by side. Regardless, it's important to have a minimum separation distance to protect fire alarm circuits from physical damage. Here are some tips for choosing the right fire alarm cable separation. This article will explain the different types and how to choose the right one. The first step is to make sure that your cables are not intertwined with other services. This may seem like a trivial detail, but you should know that if the cable is running through a room that is exposed to environmental air, it will be susceptible to damage. In such a case, you must separate the cable. Luckily, there are different types of fire alarm cables that meet this requirement. Here's how they work. A fire alarm cable is typically red in color. This helps distinguish it from other circuits. It's important to note that any cable that is not red should be separated from other electrical services, even if they're not intertwined with them. These cables should also be marked in a permanent location so that they are easy to find during maintenance or repair. These tips will help ensure that you have a proper separation between your fire alarm circuits and other services. When it comes to fire alarm cable separations, it's important to remember that these cables should be protected from other circuits. In order to prevent electromagnetic interference, fire alarm cables should not be combined with other wires. To avoid this problem, you should use a rigid metal conduit and electrical metallic tubing. If you have multiple cables, it's important to make sure that each one is protected from electromagnetic interference. So, the next time you're installing fire alarm cables, make sure that they're properly separated from other wires. Depending on the installation, mics or SWA cables should be protected. They must not be installed in the same raceway as other electrical cables, and they must be grounded. The same rule applies to all types of fire alarm cable. The most common protection method for fire alarms is to separate them into separate components. For example, a Class 1 circuit should have separate conductors and a Class B circuit should have no conductors. Moreover, the separations should be insulated the same. There are different types of fire alarm cables. Mineral insulated copper sheath cables are the most popular ones. These cables are sometimes referred to as soft skin cables. Armored fire resistant cables are more expensive and must be protected by an enclosure. For a general purpose installation, a cable should have a resistance of at least 150 volts. These cable systems are also safe for elevators. Fire alarm cable can be separated into two parts. The outgoing and return conductors must be separated. A high-quality fire alarm cable should have high conductivity and be protected against heat. It must also be protected from mechanical damage and bending, which makes it the best option. Fortunately, there are some FIA-certified companies that perform fire alarm cables. A company that meets the standards of the organization will be able to help you choose the right one. The shielded fire alarm cable is safer and offers better protection against electromagnetic interference. Its shielding can reduce the possibility of false alarms and help prevent ME. A power-limited fire alarm cable must be separated from a power-limited circuit, but they can be installed in similar fittings. They should be labeled separately. It should also be protected from overheating. It should be protected from melting and high temperature. The type of fire alarm cables you choose depends on your needs and the area. It is essential to choose a fire-resistant cable depending on your needs. In the US, there are different types of cables. Some are standard and others are enhanced. Generally, the size of the wires is not the most important factor. For most fire resistance, the cable should be fireproof throughout its length. There are several different types of cable.